Hello students, this month we are going to perform puppet warp animation. Now this should be a review for level 3s, and level 2s you will have needed to complete both the proficiency and the tutorial. Level 3s you will needed to complete the proficiency in order to do this properly. Okay, the first thing you need is a picture of yourself kind of spread out animatedly, either in an X or a pose similar to mine, against a plain background. You could also be sitting if you choose to use that sitting pose that we had in the proficiency. The first thing you're going to do, which many of you should be familiar with, is cut yourself out of the background. And you can do this either with the lasso tool, magic wand tool, or the quick selection tool, okay, or a combination of all three, and then using the eraser as well to kind of get rid of any unnecessary things. Again, if you've shot this well lit against the blue background, the chroma key background, you will have probably gotten a cleaner cut than what I have actually working here. In addition, what you want to do then is you want to create a number of layers here, and you can see I have a sky, I have two shapes, and a drawn background. So what I did next was I actually went down here and created a new layer, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I already have it here, and that new layer is my sky, okay, which I just created a background color, okay? In addition to that, I also made another new layer, okay, which is now my drawn background. And using brushes and shapes and colors, using the paint bucket tool as well, I have created these two backgrounds, okay, and they're different layers that you would have to draw from. So again, if you have performed the tutorial this month, level 2s, you'll know how to do this. Level 3s, this should be rather easy and simple for you to do. Now I encourage you and actually command you to use your own backdrop. Please do not use mine. Create something else that is of interest to you. Okay, now it is obvious that we need a little bit more in here, so we're going to add a shape tool, okay, which is the sun. Now notice that the sun actually is kind of hidden behind the drawn background, and that's because of how it's layered. Notice that over here in the layers palette, if I drag and drop that on top, that now puts the sun in front, but I like it kind of hidden behind my background, so I have it just peeking out behind the tree. Okay, now it's obvious also that I am way too large, and so a way to decrease my size would be to hit Control and then the letter T, and notice that what comes up here now, it changes up here, is I can click on that lock and I can decrease my size, okay, which I've already done. So I'm going to turn that eyeball off and turn this eyeball on. Okay, now I am the size that I want to be. I want to show you over here too. Please notice that I've renamed almost all of my layers, okay, and so what I did was pose number 1 is me large, pose number 1 small is me small. So now I'm going to duplicate pose 1 small 2 more times. So I have 3 of me essentially, but I want 3 of me doing 3 different things. So pose number 1 is going to be this way, and I'm just going to kind of wave to you. So I'm going to turn that eyeball off so that that one disappears and that this one disappears. I'm actually going to change this, double click, I'm going to change this name. You can do that by double clicking and typing if I've not shown that to you before. And I'm going to call this one pose number 3 small. Okay, just so I can keep track of which one is which. Right now, when I turn these eyeballs on and off, I look the same. Okay, but this is going to change. So I'm going to keep pose number 1 as myself. Pose number 2, I want to actually use puppet warp. So I'm going to go over to Edit, and I'm going to go down to puppet warp. And what's going to happen now is you're going to see a big mesh around me. And I'm going to do Control Plus to zoom in here a little bit. And this is going to allow me to, just by using the mouse tool, by clicking with the mouse, to add points. And the more points you add onto your body, the better. Because if you move one area, it's going to kind of move and warp the rest. So to put even places you don't plan on moving, if you don't plan on moving my legs and my feet, it's good to put these anchor points there so that nothing else moves. So if all I want to do is wave, okay, this hand, now what I do is when this one is highlighted in black, I can now, actually it's going to look a little silly, okay, like I don't know if my hand could really move that way effectively. So I'm going to edit and undo. I'm actually going to click on this one with my wrist and hit the delete button. So at any point you can click and hit delete. And now I think I want my wave to look a little more realistic, maybe a little bit more coming from my elbow. So again, I'm going to get rid of this point then too, so that I am just freestanding bending at the elbow. So this is my second pose. Okay. Alright, so I'll go ahead and hit enter to set that. Okay. So I go from pose number 1, where I'm just static. Pose number 2, I'm sort of waving a little bit further over. And now what I want to do is I actually want to duplicate that second pose. Okay, again, I'm going to make this actually my pose 3 because I want to know where I left off. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do edit, puppet warp again. And from this point, I need to make my points again. And again, the reason that I lock myself out is because watch what happens even if I try to move my head. See, look, my whole body moves if I don't have things stuck to the ground. So I'm going to undo that. So that's why I'm adding all these extra anchor points, even though I'm only moving my hand. Obviously, you can make yourself do toe touches. You could stretch yourself out. You can do all kinds of crazy things. So, but now I want to move this wave over further. That's a little hyperextending my arm to there. So that, hitting enter now, is my third pose. Okay, so now I have pose number 1, pose number 2, and pose number 3. So now with these 3 poses, I'm going to make a very simple animation. Okay, so I'm going to put pose number 1 back on. I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go down to Animation. Now, if this animation frames is not already showing, down here at the bottom, there's like a little click between kind of what looks like almost like a video editing and frame editing. And we want to do the frames. Okay, so basically what we've done, sorry, I'm going to trash this second, is we'll see one of these. All right, and I want to turn all the eyeballs off except for the first one that I want to see. So the pose number 1, small. I'm going to duplicate this frame 2 more times so I can get my other hand wave in. So I'm going to do my first wave, the second one, I'm going to turn that eyeball off, and my second pose on. I go to the third one, I'm going to turn that first one off and turn my third pose on. Okay, and I actually want to get rid of my talk bubble. I don't want that on there. Okay, and what you're going to do is 0.4, even 0.2 seconds is probably long enough. The other ones are going to be too long. Okay. And you can set this to repeat continuously if you choose. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button. Oops, and I didn't notice, but my talk bubble appears in a couple of these, and I'm actually not going to be using that. So I want to make sure that's out of all the frames. Okay, so now let me zoom out. I'm going to move this down so it's out of the way, and you can see me waving. Okay. Now there is a way, instead of once, we can tell this to go forever, so that way it just kind of keeps on a loop. Okay. One last thing, and here's how you're going to save this, so then you can upload it to the Blended School site for me to grade it. Now, this is also a way you can then send it. Obviously, we would do our first save as a PSD, just so we could have it. Okay. Our puppet warp animation. Okay. I apologize, the beeps you're hearing are my email going off, and there's no way for me to turn that off at this point. The second way we're going to save this, we're going to save this as a GIF, or some people call it a GIF file, where you could actually email this to another person, or you could, obviously this is how I'm going to grade it, but it will open up basically in any web browser for people to view and see. So it'll make it a much smaller, much more accessible, kind of like the difference between PSD and a JPEG. It will now be a difference between a PSD and a GIF file. So again, sorry, give me one more minute. This writing Photoshop format. And again, you want to have this Photoshop one so you can go back in and edit if you choose. But once we feel that we're finished with it and we're happy enough with it to get our grade, this is what we're going to do. We're going to save it as a GIF file. So I'm going to go to File, Save As again. But this time I'm going to scroll down and look for the GIF file. Okay, and so that way, again, this is the file that you will upload. Just go ahead and hit OK to these questions that are coming up. But that way, when I go to the file to open it, it will actually open in a web browser, and all we will see is the animation. You won't see any of the Photoshop things coming up. Okay, so that is your very simple simplified form of a puppet warp animation. I want you to figure out what story you want to create. Create your own background, create your own design. Please feel free to do more than 3 frames if you choose. Level 3s, I would definitely encourage you to do something more advanced to get the credit, since you already have been introduced to this. But I wish you luck and have fun with this.